I'm Camille Proctor, and I founded the Color of Autism Foundation. And so I'm going to give you my why. I move around a lot. So I founded my organization because when my son was 2 and he got his diagnosis, I set out to find a tribe. There was no tribe for me to have. When I would go to support groups, everyone in the room, no one looked like me. And it was difficult for me because I was going through so much. And I fought for so long to get the diagnosis that I knew he was autistic, but I had to fight to get the diagnosis. And then suddenly I got what I wanted, or at least what I thought I wanted, but then I didn't know what to do with it, right? And so when I would go to support groups and I would talk about what it's like to be a black person with a disability, right? Or what it's like for black people navigating America, period, ... Like, for example, what's gonna happen when my son, who's like 13, if he's still non-speaking and he gets out into the world and the police approach him, if he doesn't know what yield means, something's gonna happen to him. And they would say, no, Officer Friendly will know he's autistic. I'm like, no, because black children are almost always deemed to be older than what they really are. And they're always looked at as a menace. So I knew that I wasn't in the right space, but I needed to find the right space. But then meanwhile, in my own community, when I would talk to people about who my son was, an autistic person, and you have to excuse me, I had surgery on my throat, so my voice comes in and out. When I had to talk to people about who my son was, they'd say, oh, don't worry about it, it'll go away. Let's say a prayer, okay. I've even had people do all kinds of rituals where they palmed his forehead and said, shamalam, I don't know what it, and it's gone. But it was still there. So I knew that something had to be created to support people and help people. So as I navigated through my own situation, I founded an organization. And initially, I thought the key was early intervention, information, early intervention. Well, what the problem was that, all right, so you're telling people they have a child with a developmental disability or a neurological disability, whatever we're calling autism nowadays. I'm not really up on that. I'm up on autistic people, though. And so you're telling them you have an autistic child, but you're not teaching them how to accept their child or accept the fate of their child, which could be altered greatly by their support. So I realized that one of the things, the most important key to supporting and being an ally is teaching parents how to accept their children first, right? And then learning about their child, learning what their child's triggers are. So we teach parents in our 5-week training how to be data collectors. We turn them into you guys. We literally give them a sheet of paper and say, I want you to write down every time that kid hits that wall, what time of day it is. So we have to figure out what's triggering him or her to hit the wall. Why is he or she doing what they're doing? And then bring it back and let's talk about it. Let's try to narrow things down, because all stems aren't good, right? Some of it, and we explain to them what these things are, but back to the data collection, our goal is to have that child be comfortable. Because if the child's comfortable, then it's easier for the child to acquire some of the skills that they need, not the things that the parents want. Because that's one thing that I had to learn to get out of my own head. It was just so convenient for him to do what I needed him to do. But I never bothered to say, hey, what do you want to do? Never bothered. And when I realized that I had to take myself out of the equation, literally, it got easier for me because I was able to look at him as the person that he was, not this thing, this object, or this little person that I gave birth to, this thing I gave birth to, but he was a person, and he had feelings and he had thoughts. And that's how we began the process of meeting my son's needs. And this is the process that we try to take parents through. When we talk about building a society that's inclusive, the inclusion starts at home. The parents have to accept their children. Like every parent will say, I love him, but do you accept him? Those are two different things. Loving someone, but accepting who they are two different things. And it's important for parents to accept who their children are. Because, again, the best part of being an ally is accepting who you're supporting. And if you have no respect for that person, you're not an ally. You're just a person that's there. You're a cheerleader, perhaps. I've been talking all day, so I'm kind of jumping around. I talk to researchers frequently, and now I'm gonna get to you guys. I talk to researchers frequently about how you do your research and how you do your recruitment. So, interestingly enough, I think there's lots of ways things that can be improved, right? I think one of the things you don't do is really look at how you are partners in this community. You're a partner. And so a good partner delves into what the community needs, right? So instead of saying, and I'm making all of this up because I've done a research study, but it was basically on the efficacy of our programming. So let's just say you want to figure out autism and sleep issues, right? So you want a parent to track their child's sleep habits, and you want them to take this chart, and every night they got to write something on the chart, right? What's in it for that parent? Why would they want to do that? They got 2 jobs. This one's the only autistic one, this one right here, and this one has this problem and that problem. What's in it for them? You could say to them, listen, if we track the sleep, then we can find out why the child is having discomfort and getting up in the middle of the night. That might work for some parents. But then for other parents, they may need support. They may need the support to get them through behaviors. So I'll give you an example. We have a partnership with researchers where we are offering a 5-week training. And the 5-week training is parents learning, again, the data collection, but they're also learning about therapeutic services. Why is this important? Because when you're doing a research study, you need to give people tangible things. Tangibles, not like a stipend. You need to give them tangibles. Because I can tell you right now that people across America, these parents, they're on wait lists. They're on wait list after list after list, probably even here. So saying to them, we're gonna give you this, but we're gonna give you a skill. We're gonna give you a place that you can meet every Saturday from 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 12:30 p.m. You're gonna meet there. You're gonna learn about speech pathology, but from a different lens. You're gonna see someone that looks like you. And you're gonna take down that wall that you've put up for that white practitioner, and you're just gonna tell the truth. And so now you have parents engaging. They're asking you all types of questions, like, how do I do this, and how do I do that? Which is great, because you got them to open up. And then they're looking at behaviorists, and they're getting their answers, the answers to their questions. But also, in the Zoom screen, they're seeing 30 other people that are in the same boat that they're in. But these people are all across the country. And believe it or not, that's really lessening isolation because they know that they're not alone. They know that they have someone in New Jersey, someone in Seattle, Las Vegas, wherever, that's just like them, that's going through this. And they're forging friendships and communities, and they're building things. And I think that it's important for researchers to help be a part of that community. Because when you offer tangible things, you are part of the solution. It goes beyond the data that you're collecting to you really creating an inclusive society. Because let's be honest, everything in its design needs to be inclusive. Everything. And I think that your research can create an inclusive society, but you also have to be able to be society partners, if I'm making any sense. You have to learn how to be the partners that these families need, because that's the buy-in. That's the buy-in. Why would I want to track my son's sleep? Well, I want to track my son's sleep because if I'm able to turn this data over to UC Davis, they're going to be able to maybe create a protocol to get him to sleep better. Or, if we delve a little bit deeper, perhaps, and I hate big pharma, but if it's necessary, there may be a drug that could be created to help him, or a therapeutic intervention. But it's important. But I now know that they were able to invest in me, so I can invest in this little time at night to write this stuff down. In underserved communities, it's very important that you get this engagement. And I think that too often when you don't look like your subjects, you're afraid. You feel intimidated. You're like, no. Literally, just say, whatever your question is. Don't ask them about their hair. Besides, I'm just joking. Don't ask. Don't touch it. But other than that, ask the questions that you need to ask. Ask them, how do you feel about this? What are your daily routines? What are some of your rituals? I know that I've spoken a lot, so I'm trying not to be redundant because I've met with so many of you and some of you haven't heard me speak, but talk about, okay, so you're Muslim. And for those of you who don't know, Muslims can only use their left hand for certain things. So ask them about that because it's important. If you're a practitioner or a behavioral practitioner, talk to them. Is it important for your child? Now, I know we don't get into religion. I don't usually do that, but you still, if that's important in that household, you got to integrate it. You got to integrate it, You got to bring that prayer rug in, and you got to practice with that kid. Even if that's not your religion, that's important in that household. Bring mom, bring dad in so they can practice this with the child. When you do that, you're building that partnership with that family. You care. You're not just an outsider trying to pull information from them. You're now part of that family. And as a researcher, you're also part of that family's future. Because you're changing the way that they see things. You're changing the way that they see things. And I think that oftentimes that's just missing. It's always been the missing piece. It was originally the missing piece for me until I became this bulldozer and I just go in and tell you what you're going to do for me and I ain't leaving until you give it to me. But you have to get people to that point. So I'm trying to think. I'm sorry, I've talked so much today. I'm trying to remember anything I did not cover. But I just do. I really think that before you come to organizations, even like mine, and I know that it's difficult being a researcher, and I know that you need to collect data and information from people. Before you inbox someone like me, hi, my name is Cindy, and I would like for you to help me recruit. I need for you to understand this, and I want you to all to listen carefully. I ain't got time for y'all. I ain't got time to do your job. I got stuff to do. So you may want to think about it and say, hey, we want to go for this RFP for whatever. We know that the Color of Autism offers parent support, or we know it doesn't even have to be me, or we know that this organization offers support. We need to write them into this particular RFP so that we can get the parent support and we can get the buy-in. That way, you're not inboxing someone for free work because there's no incentive for me to help you when I have to answer email after email after email and also run a parent support group and also help people all across the country with other things. That's really the gist of what I wanted to say today, is that it's important for cultural competence to be in every part of what you do. And it doesn't even matter if it's cultural competence in Ireland. It doesn't matter. Because we all know that all Italians aren't the same. There's Sicilians, there's people that aren't that South. There's all different types of people in this world. And it's very important that you recognize it. And I think that as the people who, I like to call researchers, the people who are in the background, kind of observing stuff, as observers, you need to be better at your job. Part of observing is picking up social cues, right? Some of you don't pick up the social cues so much. You get stuck in your own heads about what you want, but you need to get out of your own heads and you need to get into the heads of the people that you're trying to get the information from. Don't be what we call pickers. Don't pick the information that you want. You need to get the information in a meaningful way, and it should be given up to you freely, not like pulling teeth. Get your families and your subjects engaged in what you're doing. Make them a part of what you're doing. So that way there's meaning in it, right? If there's meaning behind it, then they know they've made a difference. I always say, and I've said this all day long, when I leave this earth, I want to make sure that my son has a community of people, right? Well, he's not going to have a community of people if we don't build it. We have to be mindful in how we include people and how we treat people. We have to be very mindful of that. And we have to make sure that this community of autistic people, which is becoming the norm, neurodivergent people are the norm. We need to make sure that there's a strong community that supports them.
So I love this partnership idea, as everyone here knows, and I really appreciate that. One of, I think, a big challenge in research, so say I partner with your group and we get this relationship, we're still then going to need to recruit, for example, lots and lots of families, probably more than, oftentimes we do like training of the provider and then they recruit the family. Then we have to send them this a lengthy consent form and a lot of regulatory things. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts about how we can make that process, because there are a lot of good reasons, right, to explain to people all the risks and all of that, but I think it's also, and we take the measures, like are there ways we could do that in a more sensitive way, and or is there something we can offer for that besides a gift card that would be more meaningful or something that make that process a little better?
Let me answer the latter part. I think one of the ways of encouraging people to participate, right? Remember when I said ask them what they need? Ask them what they need, but then you need to ask them a series of other questions. And what I mean is that oftentimes people will say to you, well, I need access to this, and I need access to that. They may not necessarily need those things, but let them tell you about it. So then you say, are you familiar with what speech pathology is? No, he goes there. What about ABA? What about applied behavioral analysis? Are you familiar with that? Are you familiar with OT, floor time? Ask them, are you familiar with these therapeutic processes? Why are you asking me this? Well, you know, if you got familiarized with some of these therapeutics, then you can complement what your child is learning in these therapeutics at home. And that way, you'll get better results. Well, how do I learn more about it? Well, and you start talking about the various programs or the partners that you have. Now, in regard to the regulatory stuff, I think you just explained it. It's necessary, right? We need to have you complete these forms in order for you to participate. I mean, there's no way to get around it because you have to protect yourself, your institution, but also the parents should be mindful of protecting themselves, right? I don't think you can get around it, but I do think that you can kind of do a mini assessment of need, right? And take some of the answers that they give you and realize there may be, I don't want to say deficits, but areas for improvement within that household and within those certain communities, if I'm making any sense.
Hi, you mentioned a little bit at lunch about self-advocates, and I would like to know a little bit more about what your organization does for the kids that graduate from school and are now adults and need more support as an adult, and there's not very many programs for autistic adults. Do you guys have trainings and stuff for them as well, or just parents?
Not yet. We had a couple of programs that we tried to launch, but the pandemic kind of squashed some of it. So some of the things that we're taking a look at is how many people who've gone to college and have bachelor's and master's degrees that are baristas. And we're finding that some of these people are neurodivergent, some of them are autistic, but they're not actually living their true selves, meaning they don't have a voice and choice because they haven't been able to advocate for the accommodations that they need. So we do work with small groups in regards to accommodations, what their rights are, and we typically what we do with those who are graduating from high school and we know that there's not really good vocational programs, we start doing our own assessments in regards to what their skills are. Like, what would you like to do? Now, some of it isn't if we interviewed my 17-year-old right now, right, which is what we don't want to do, he'll come up with a job that's not even a job. He wants to be the chicken inspector or something bizarre. That could be a thing, but I mean, we talk to them and we ask them, what types of careers would you be interested in? And we try to get them mentors. So it's a difficult thing. So right now, we have a program that we just started last year, and we're taking just neurodivergent people of all ages, and we're getting them into a music studio, and we're teaching them how to make, for those of you who don't know, beats, right? So we're teaching them how to make music beats, because you don't necessarily have to be a musician to create a beat and sell a beat and have a viable income. So we're also teaching our youngsters how to be entrepreneurs. You don't necessarily have to go to college, but for example, you like baking. So we've partnered with commercial kitchens to let some of our young adults bake and sell their baked goods at farmers markets. So we're trying, but we can't do everything, and then it also takes a really dedicated staff of people who are more familiar than I am. And so we're working on, meeting the social emotional needs, because I really feel like when people set out to do these programs, I think I overthink it, and I think in terms of what is someone that is an autistic adult, what is their social emotional need, right? And then I think the mistake that we make with all autistic people is that we throw them in all together, right? And we don't understand that this autistic adult might be into, I don't know any current television shows, so I just drew up. I was going to use an example. What's the guy about the soccer guy in England? Ted Lasso. So you got one person. Thank you for helping me out. So you got one person that likes Ted Lasso, and then you got the other one over here talking about roadblocks, and then you got this one. So you can't do that. So that is one of the problems that we've had. We've not been able to sort of parse everybody out to make everyone happy. Because I get these emails, Miss Camille, why am I in here with this kid? He's talking about blah, 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 blah. I don't talk about that.
Thank you for your talk. I'm wondering if you can just share with us some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned in this journey that you've had in not only advocating for your child, but advocating for a community of people. And so what would you say were some of your most valuable lessons learned so far?
Wow, my most valuable lesson in this journey was actually connecting to self-advocates. people who've been there, done that, seen that, took a picture and still writing a book. It was incredibly insightful for me to sit down and have a conversation with someone who basically gave me the rundown from childhood to where they were and where they are now. And it really helped me re-examine how I looked at my son. And I think that's when I mentioned to you that I stopped thinking in terms of what I wanted him to do, and I started thinking about what he wanted and what made him feel comfortable. And also, how do you feel when I say certain things about you? And I don't mean insults. I mean just the things that we think that we're saying to help them, but we're not helping them. It's a heavy, for an autistic person, this is how I look at it. I believe it's a heavy load for them to bear. And I think that the best thing that a parent can do is get to know one. They're not one size fits all, but knowing that my son has a community has been a tremendous load off my shoulder, like tremendous. You know, people telling me stuff like an AAC device won't hinder him from speaking. Get him an AAC device. A self-advocate told me that. It's not gonna stop. I don't care what they say, get him this. You know, just having, those are my mentors. Those are the people that I go to. Those are the people that give me the reliable information that I need to progress in my organization and with my allyship with my son. I even think with research, I think that those are another avenue of people that you really need to be tapping into, because they have opinions, but they want to make it better for them.
I wanted to ask you, you work with lots and lots of families and have been all over the country. You must hear some issues that Black families want to know more about. What should we be studying as researchers? Can you help us?
Their questions really aren't that different. They always think they want to know the cause of autism. Mm-hmm. They think that. But if you gave it to them, that wouldn't really help them. But they think they want to know the cause of that. So if you can answer that, that'd be great. And then I want to see. So if you want to start there,
Okay.
there you go. I don't know if they feel better, but that's all okay, so is this going to tell me what caused it? And honestly, I was saying earlier, it's not my job. I don't care about, I hate to sound rude, I don't care about autism. I don't care why, who, when, what. My son is who he is. He's an autistic person, just like he's a Black person. That's part of his identity, and it's not something he's gonna lose. You can't wash it off. So I'm unconcerned about the causes of autism, but what I am concerned about, and I try to get Black families to focus on, is the behaviors. What is causing the headbutting? What is causing just, some of the behaviors that can be destructive to that individual? Self-harming. If those are the things that I try to get them to focus on. I'll say to parents, you don't hate autism. You hate the behaviors, the extreme behaviors. And that's one of the things that you really have to send home to parents. It's not this diagnosis. It's the things that are attached with the diagnosis that you don't have any control over. And it's the not having any control that is the problem. But then, when you don't have the skill to address the problem, that's another problem. So that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about training and information, because it's the lack of information in these underserved communities that is causing a huge disparity.
Earlier, when other people weren't here, we were talking about, well, there are a lot of people in here, I think, that do identification and diagnosis, and it interested me earlier when you were talking about some families wanting a different label.
Oh, yeah.
And so I wanted other people to hear that.
See, full disclosure, I've talked so much, it works better now that I just get people to throw stuff up I said earlier than me just talking about it. So one of the things that we have a big problem with in the Black community is that children get diagnosed as oppositional defiant, and they're not getting the correct diagnosis. So parents not really being familiar with autism, they look at it as something really negative. So then they go, well, he can be oppositional defiant. That's not autism. But the problem is that everything about that diagnosis is negative. And so I talk to parents about the label. You're putting your child into the prison pipeline on a fast track. You're just putting him on that train and just letting him ride because he's a bad child. To me, I'm not a clinician. I don't know who came up with that term, but oppositional defiant just means, excuse my expression, you're just a badass kid. And where do all bad kids go? Eventually they go to jail because people give up on them. People give up. People don't try hard to save a bad child. People try hard to save an autistic person, right? So when parents say to me, oh, well, I don't like that label. And I go, oh, how does this one sound? And they go, what? 1, 2, 8, 5, 9, 6, 7, 8, 4. What's that? His prison inmate number. His prison inmate number, because you're sending him to prison. And then they go, yeah, because you're not accepting who they just told you this child was. And you don't want to do anything about it, so let's not do anything about it. Oppositional defiance sound better. There's a kid who's white, who's autistic. He's in Harvard. He is a parapro doing his work. He's about to get his PhD. The lady's doing his homework for him, but he's getting it because he's autistic and he has accommodations. And your son is either in trouble or in the basement playing Xbox. The choice is yours. Do you want to build a future for your child? Do you want your child to get the right accommodations so that you can meet their needs? Whether their need be extra time on a test that they have studied for and they know the answers, but they need just a little more time to focus. Just a little more time. Or do you just want to give up on them? And so we talk to parents about this because labels are important. They are. The autistic label is a very important label if you want to be able to advocate for yourself. Your child needs to say, wait a minute, because my son will tell you, whoop, I need time to process. He'll throw that finger up one moment. Or he'll say, you know what? I need some time. Can I go sit in the hallway? Can I take a walk? Let me get back to you. Your children people need to learn how to advocate for themselves properly. And this autistic label plays into, again, the identity of the people.
Thank you so much for that. I think you tapped on something so important, which is this idea of identity, but in particular, the intersectionality piece, right? So, there's there's disability and then race, mm-hmm. right? And also additional identity factors, right, that are in play here. So for our audience, maybe you can talk a little bit about, as clinicians and researchers, how to be able to prepare yourself to have patient-centered care for people who have intersectional identities and families who have intersectional identities, because it's not just a person with autism that's coming. It's a Black child with autism. It's a queer Black child with autism. It's all these different factors, right, that are coming into play, and all these different identities have associations. And so this plays with, this impacts not only the patient or the child, but also the family. So how would you, any advice you would give for researchers or clinicians that are in that situation?
Approach with caution. No, you should, so be very cautious, and I think be very mindful of how you engage them. And I think the first step is just asking them about themselves, right? Asking them about themselves. And you don't have to make that connection on that first meeting. If you have to come back to like one of your colleagues and say, hey, they're talking about this woman, Big Mama. Who's Big Mama? That's their grandmother. Just, you don't have to have the answers in that first meeting, but what you can have is the information that you can bring back and create solutions with. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people, so I'll give you an example of one of my autistic adults. They're an autistic adult now, but they're also a trans woman. And so when their mother thought that they were just, they just had ADHD, the mother made a decision when that child was 14 or 15, just to say, okay, you're a trans woman. And so they started the transition process together. And I'm telling you this is because one of the things that happened is that when they went through the new diagnostics that uncovered that this young woman was autistic, that was a barrier. Because no one took the time to find out when the transition started, how the family felt about it. They just made this assumption that this was a black trans woman and everyone in the family was against her, when in fact, everyone in the family was for her. She just needed that missing piece, meaning she needed to know that she was an autistic woman, not a woman with ADHD. So I think it's important not to jump to conclusions, to really ask those meaningful questions. And sometimes you'll be embarrassed to ask those questions, but ask them anyway. And if you don't know how to ask the question, ask a colleague, how do I get to know if dad's in the home? Like, how do I ask that without sounding like a judgmental person? How do I get, and so there's ways to get around stuff, but you really have to up the game on your dialects and talking to people and what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. Because it's hard. Because even sometimes for me, I have moms that come to our trainings on Saturdays. And oftentimes, even I've made the assumption that it was just mom. Because mom is the person that's showing up for the trainings. And then they pan over and I see another leg on the couch and it's dad. Because they're sitting on the couch and they're learning together. So in your investigations, try to be more meaningful in the questions that you ask so that you can be responsive to their needs. And again, you're that family's ally as well as that individual's ally. And allyship begins in a partnership. And you can't be a partner if you don't know anything about the other person or persons.
So where do you recommend a family starts, regardless of their race? Because I think a lot of communities have the same issues where they don't feel, in the Asian community or the Hispanic community, like they get intimidated walking into a room of people that they think, don't know what they're going through or what they're experiencing. And I also feel that it's very intimidating for a family to question a physician or health person because, they're more educated than me or they do this for a living, whereas, someone else would be like, in a nice way, like, you're wrong. I need more answers or whatever. So where is a good kind of place to start for people to find groups like yours or other kind of advocacy avenues, things like that?
So interestingly enough, you would think there would be more, and there are more because, but they're not so many because people get discouraged. I'll be honest with you. I've been around since 2009. I didn't actually get funded for what I call a real grant until 2019, 2018. And I'm telling you this is because people give up, right? Like I had a marketing company and I was helping people. So basically I was footing the bill for other people paying facilitators through my company so that parents could have these things. But to really answer the question, it's real simple. Parents need to know that they're their child's first and best teacher, and no one knows their child like they know their child, right? So my C-section scar trumps anything they learn. They know, those parents. They don't know anything more than from this scar that I got. So I know everything about whatever came out, I know everything. But no, seriously, you have to give the parents the power. You have to empower them and let them know. And you're right, it goes beyond race. I think it goes throughout all ethnicities. But the piece is that those parents and their identity is very important, and it's very tied into the work that you do, but it's also closely tied into the outcomes that their child has. And if they stay mute and they bow down to just 2 letters, MD, or 3 letters, PhD, right? They're doing themselves a disservice, because I can tell you that Dr. Mom knows a lot. Don't combine Dr. Mom with Dr. Google, or you'll have a hot mess, because those two don't go together. Dr. Mom and Dr. Google, no. That's a bad union. But Dr. Mom and her just basic instincts about what she's feeling, those are valid. And I think that there has to be a way to encourage open communication. And again, it starts with getting people who are familiar within that community, trusted allies, and you really have to work hard. I know, like, I was talking to a group of behaviorists, and they were all white, and they were just like, I just don't understand. And I'm like, in order for you to kick the door open, you gotta toss somebody in there that looks like the people so that they feel comfortable. And then you come in after that person and you talk to them and you say, you know, I now know what some of your concerns are. They're valid concerns, and let's work on these skills. Because I tell my parents, I get parents who will send me an email, I need all black everything. That doesn't exist. Sorry. But what I can give you is a practitioner that has been through some of our training, because we do train practitioners and behaviorists on cultural competence. And I forgot to include, we also train daycare and nursery schools to be responsive to these little babies, because it's a requirement, but they throw them out, and so we tie that to poverty levels, right? If you don't have anyone to watch your child, you're gonna stay impoverished. But if these daycare workers have the ability to be responsive to the needs of these children, right, and not toss them out, knowing that that biter needs a Tuileries, knowing that that one that's screaming might not like that light, creating a calming corner so the children can go into, that mom or that dad can continue working. So really, to answer your question, you can't give up on the, and I don't think that you would, but you can't give up on the ideal of having someone that's from that community engage them. And I think that it would behoove you to really even go into these communities and say, hey, who wants to be a community peer person? And you work with these individuals as peer support, or whatever name you want to give them, and their whole job is to be ambassadors to the community, because they know the people that, I'm from the Midwest, East Coast, they know the people at the bodega, or they know the people at the market, or they know the person at the school. They're familiar with the community, so they're trusted, right? They know the dialect, they know the lingo. And use these people, use them to penetrate these communities that you're trying to get into. But you can't get into them without trust. You gotta have trust, and you gotta have someone that knows the blueprint in order to do it. And honestly, your allyship will shine through if you do those steps. Because I feel like everyone in this room has the capability of being good supports for people that look like anything. Like, I don't think you have to be a particular race to be a good person. You just have to be open to being a good person and being a good ally.
How do you see the future of the foundation going forward? I know that, funding is always a thing for everyone, but if it were all the funding in the world, what do you think the most important directions are?
Really, honestly, I think the future of what we're doing is that we're going to continue creating inclusive environments. We have to be able to create spaces, like doing a daycare training and talking to physicians and talking to people that support other people. That was a blanket statement because autistic people are people. You just have to be able to be responsive to all people, right? For example, you know that a person that has a wheelchair needs accessibility to a building. Okay, autistic people have needs too, so that needs to be in the design of everything. And so my goal with my foundation is to make sure that autistic people are seen, heard, and everything that we do, we're designing it so that they can thrive. And that's what I want to do. I don't think I can do it all because I need people like you to help me, but that's ideal. Like if you take anything away from all the things I've said, and I've said quite a bit, is that I need you to be the allies that I know you can be, because my son needs you, and there's other people besides my son that need you. But we're just gonna talk about me, because I'm gonna be selfish. He needs all of you. He needs all of you, because there's no greater feeling in the world than having people that care. And I'll give you a short anecdotal story. I have someone that now works for me, but before they worked for me, they would watch my son for me when I traveled or I did stuff, but they would, like if my daughter was at work, she'd watch him. Anywho, we started going out into the community. There was all these random people. Hi, Ari. Hi. Like, how do you, who? Find out that every place she went, she took him. So if she was working as a volunteer at the food bank and she's passing out free food, she had Ari on the fruit cocktail, dropping them in the bags. So all the older people who she was giving food to, they all knew, hi, baby, hi. I'm like, who are they? What the? So my son was in the community. People knew who he was. And that meant everything to me because they cared. They like genuinely cared. And I'll see a lady, how's my baby doing? You mean a giant? Oh, he's 6'2" now. Oh, he's so big. But I didn't know any of these people. But everybody knows my son. Everyone knows I kid you not. Everyone knows him. He's like the celebrity. I don't even question it anymore. But that's a great feeling because they're vetted to him, right? They're vetted to him. So if heaven forbid if something happened and I have to do that mad scramble, everyone's going to come out of their house like it's on fire looking for him. And that's a great feeling. And I want to have that for all people, not just him. But I greatly appreciate the fact that everyone knows him.
The UC Davis Mind Institute was founded in 1998 with the promise to reduce and prevent the disabilities that can be associated with autism and other neurodevelopmental conditions. Every day, our clinicians and researchers make progress on that promise. Our groundbreaking research on autism, Fragile X syndrome, chromosome 22q11.2 deletion syndrome, ADHD, and other conditions associated with disability are helping affected individuals achieve their fullest potential. Please visit our website or our social media platforms to find out more about current studies, upcoming events, and how you can help make a difference.